Welcome to Innovators Unscripted, the podcast for innovators by innovators. Today, Tina and I are joined by Dr. Fonz from the VIA 2020 cohort of the Innovator Academy. We are so excited that you're here with us today. We cannot wait to hear about your story. We've already heard just a little bit, and I can't wait to hear more. So before we dive in, can you give our listeners just a brief introduction to who you are and where you're coming to us from today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Dr. Alfonso Mendoza, but everybody knows me as Dr. Fonz. I am from deep South Texas, and I'm talking about they call it the South Pole of Texas because it's the southernmost point in Texas. So that's where I reside, right along the border from Mexico. They also call it the Rio Grande Valley. So this is where I have lived. This is where I grew up. This is where I was born. So I've done everything here within this community as far as, primary, secondary, university, doctorate, everything here within this community. And I've been in education for, this is 20 years in the K-12 space. And I recently transitioned into the EdTech space. So I'm really excited about that. But I have served as a high school teacher for my first 3 years. Then I did another 5 years of elementary, fifth and sixth grade, science, math, social studies. Didn't do any reading at all during that time. But then that's when I really kind of started integrating a lot of technology, like in about 2015. And so much so that my district took notice of what I was doing in my classrooms, being very innovative with coding, robotics, technology, that when the position opened up for district digital coordinator, then I applied for it, got the job. So I served in that role for 7 years. And then the last two, I think I lost my math there, but the last two were as an assessment coordinator also as well. So I have kind of seen the full gamut of classroom, of course, the digital integration, assessment, and the importance of that, but also working with very closely with our special education department and our emergent bilingual department as well. And so, just real quick segue on that. I never wanted to be a teacher, but I fell into teaching and I absolutely fell in love with it. So it's been a wonderful journey and it has been amazing in the community. I absolutely love, and I just love giving back to the community and just to help inspire the next wave of educators. And in this case, the next wave of Google innovators as well.
Well, just that little brief recap of your story is already so amazing. So you've been through all of these different roles in education and worn all these different hats. And it kind of segues perfectly into our little icebreaker that we like to start with, which is our browser tab confession. I hear a lot of roles and jobs, responsibilities, and also interests in there too. So can you tell us, maybe before you hopped on to this meeting today, how many tabs do you have open? And maybe tell us one that might be unexpected.
Okay, sorry, I was just counting. I have 16 tabs open right now. So and basically it's really just all my social media because as you know, I do host the My EdTech Life podcast. So I have 16 tabs open. The majority of those tabs are going to be to all my social medias because I was sharing clips from my most recent podcast and I was sharing those out. So when you're a podcaster, as you all know, and now have gotten into the podcast space, which is fantastic in what you're doing, you realize that you have to wear many hats. So you're your own social media manager, you are your own editor, you are your own pretty much everything. So really the main one that I always stick to is my and again, I'm not getting sponsored or paid, but I do have what I use is Buzzsprout, which is my hosting platform, and I'm always constantly checking analytics as far as episodes and how they do. So that's really where I'm at right now as far as my tabs. So imagine that 16 tabs, social media, editing, and just putting stuff up. So yeah.
Well, now I feel slightly, well, not even slightly, I'll just say woefully inadequate in my space of either social media or podcasting. So now we know we're just going to have a whole conversation right now with the Dr. Fonz about like how to do better at podcasts. But going forward, I think our listeners would possibly prefer the fact that we want to go into the idea of the Innovator Academy. And we really want to hear your story specifically because you're part of Do they say VIA or VIA 20?
VIA.
VIA 20. And
Yeah.
here's why, because most of the like hashtags and things are based off of spaces, but you are coming from like the pandemic situation
Yes.
where it was the virtual academy. So tell us a little bit about your like cohort, set the scene for us. What was your like project about? And then maybe we'll get some more into the idea of what that virtual space was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine that, we never went back to school in March. So I'm there at work. All of a sudden we hear pandemic news and we're like, okay, so we're going into spring break, March 13th, Friday the 13th. And they're saying, well, we're going to see how it goes during spring break. And then all of a sudden I get a call and say, hey, we're going to flip the switch. And now you're not coming back, but you have to train all our teachers, just one of me, for 14 schools, and that's K through 12, and training all the teachers on Google Classroom, Screencastify, all our platforms that we're doing, Kami, Edpuzzle, all of that. And so now I had just finished my master's in educational technology, so I just felt like a fish in water. I'm like, yes, this is what I've been training for my whole life, and all of a sudden it comes to fruition. And it was a very interesting time, obviously, for everybody just being locked in at home and then, going virtual, and teachers not having a clue, the fear, obviously for students too, as well, and parents and everything. So the whole community was shook, the whole world was shook. And so within that time, it's almost like it was a little ray of hope and a little ray of sunshine, in a bad situation, always trying to look for the good. And all of a sudden, Global GEG was born, which was the Global Google Educators Group. And all of a sudden, I just linked up with them and we started doing PDs, virtual PDs for free at odd hours, given time. So I got to do English, I got to do Spanish, I got to do so much of that. And so got linked up with that. And then I learned about Google Innovators. And this was, and by the way, VI or 2020 was the second year that I applied. And we'll go into a little bit of that story. So it wasn't, the first shot. So for any innovators listening or future innovators, just be persistent, be persistent, be persistent. Your time will come. When the time is right, it's going to happen. And so found out about innovators and I was like, okay, let me go ahead and apply. And during that time, I mean, the availability of innovators everywhere to reach out to that can help you and walk you through the application process, walk you through and help you with videos, and just the connections that were made. I was like, there's something special here. There is a tight community of educators that are here to help one another, lift each other up, be there as a support. And that was probably one of the highlights of this very interesting period, that there was those connections, but it was a beautiful kind of experience altogether, even though it was virtual. And we'll talk a little bit more about that experience a little bit more. But that's kind of where it was. And it was just the best thing that could have ever happened, because after that, so many doors and opportunities opened up and so much growth. And I can definitely attribute a lot of my success that I have had to making those connections and to and everything that I learned within the Innovator Academy as well, from my coach and my cohort and my group, my team and everything. So it was just fantastic.
So, your overall idea that was your problem of practice, did that come because of being in that global GEG space or being in that situation with the pandemic? Or were you kind of already thinking about your problem and what you wanted to focus on ahead of time?
That is a great question. And so what happened is I had already started my role as digital learning coordinator in, I think, 2017. So part of that was also working with parents. So we would do Technology Tuesdays with parents. So we would invite parents, to come to the district offices. We would have meetings with them. I would show them, platforms that their kids were using I would show them how to code. Also, we would do hour of code together. We would implement technology. I would help them, just kind of build up those digital skills. But what it was is because of the area that I live in is predominantly Spanish speaking. And not only that, but at that time too, we were starting to see a lot of parents coming in also speaking Japanese, Korean, and other various languages, because across the border they had the manufacturing plants at the time. So a lot of families were moving in. So the idea is that myself growing up, an emergent bilingual student, not learning English till second grade, it's like I always had that compassion for parents that they didn't know what was going on. They wanted more information. Language was a barrier because even myself growing up, imagine an 8-year-old being a language barrier, calling offices to set up appointments for my mom or dad, or reading letters or trying to read and interpret letters and things of that sort at such an early age. It was just something in my heart was I need to help them. I know where they're coming from. I know how they feel. I saw my parents in that. I saw kind of my parents in all of those parents. And so that was where my project and my passion initially came from, was to really help build up some digital learning resources or digital citizenship resources, but in Spanish for parents, because I always wanted to give them resources that they can read through and talk to their children about at home. So it opens up those conversations. So that's where the project came in already back in 2017, but I just didn't know that that would be the project that I initiated and started with when I joined the academy. But as you may experienced, or maybe some people within your cohort or cohorts prior, it's not always going to be the project that you end up with. So sometimes you go into the academy with, yes, this is what I'm going to do to save the world. But then when you come in, it's like, oh, you kind of reframe things and you're like, well, maybe that's not really it. And maybe this is it. And you end up finding your passion. And that to me was the big thing, that I was able to find my passion and seeing how I may help serve at a bigger level. And so that's where kind of the podcast came from as my final project, which was something that even my coach said, I was wondering when you were going to switch your topic, because this you like, so when I rang the fail bell, I rang it loudly and I rang it proudly, and I failed forward. And so then my project ended up being My EdTech Life, which now has just turned 6 2 days ago. And we're still continuing doing the podcast and enhancing and actually in amplifying educator voices, amplifying professionals, amplifying creators, and anybody within the education space to continue to grow and learn from one another.
Wow. Well, happy belated birthday to the podcast. You covered a lot of ground. Let's take this kind of step by step and retrace and kind of fill in some really important pieces to that story. Starting with like the academy itself, because you were in the VIA 20 Academy, which was very unique. Even I think it was probably, was it the first virtual academy?
First virtual
I think
academy.
so. And I know that they've gone on to it, but I know it's evolved since then. So yours was really unique because it was pioneering and it was also this necessity. We talked a little bit about it before we started recording, but can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like? And maybe if you know some other people have done it in the in-person ones, maybe some compare contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came into the academy, obviously I was bummed. I think for a lot of us, we were like, oh man, we were hoping that this whole thing would just clear up, and I'm talking about the pandemic, and that we would be able to meet in person and travel and just experience what everybody else prior to us had experienced. But as we know, that didn't come to fruition. So when they decided to go virtual, we're like, okay. And I think it worked out very well, especially with all the different time zones and all the different countries and all the different groups and everything. I think for it being that first time, I think it was something that was just a wonderful experience altogether. because like I was talking to you all a little bit earlier, actually prior to recording, uh, I think it was the academy was, I think it was about 7 weeks that we would meet weekly with our coaches who were phenomenal. And we were split up into obviously our cohorts, but then into teams. So there was about 4 or 5 of us in a team, and each one of us was working on our projects, and we were continually just communicating. We were building bonds. I mean, even to this day, the people in my group, my coach, and everything, we still communicate with one another and, cheer on each other's successes and everything. And, but it was a very unique situation where just having somebody constantly just kind of helping you, pushing you, and striving for excellence was something that was great, because you knew that by next week you had to go on to another piece of your project and really start building. uh, did I hear some great things, obviously, from the people that are doing this in person? Yes, the innovators before me, that group from Global GEG, those that did do it in person spoke wonders, and how great it was, and how great it to see everybody in person and work together. But for myself, and I'm not diminishing one or the other, but I think for me, the VIA in virtual worked so good in helping me stay on the right path. My coach would keep us in check. We would do one-on-ones, whereas the academy, in person, goes a little bit quicker. You only have maybe what, 2.5 days, and so on. So you're really in and out. And as much and how great it can be that you're there together with people, I think having that 7 weeks or that time to really see your project through and have it come to fruition is something that is marvelous. And so I really, really did enjoy that. However, like I said, now I have gotten the opportunity to meet also some of my cohort in person, which is fantastic. And then, of course, we just share stories, but it was a very unique experience. And for anybody that's listening that is applying for innovator and you're thinking, well, I really want the in-person, give the virtual, just give it a thought, also as well. It's not a bad experience, it was a wonderful experience. So I just kind of want to give you both, in case you have heard a lot from the in-person. The virtual really helped me solidify, again, the project, see it through. And by the end of our presentations and so on, I mean, you're talking about a full-on project done, presentation, and everything. So again, it depends on what it is you prefer, but it was a very unique and wonderful experience for sure.
That really stands out to me, that you are so much involved in the idea of working with other people and having a community to reach out to. The global GEG, I just have to give you kudos for that, because when the pandemic happened, I had all my certifications and I had done everything. I was like, I just need to find a space of people who is ed tech to figure out how to survive this right now. And you guys were an absolute lifeline, and it was amazing. And you could tell that you all got along together and that you had built all these bonds together. And I'm sure the Innovator Project was probably very similar to that, especially in that virtual space. And there is another virtual one coming up. So if you are thinking about becoming an innovator, like definitely check that out, because I think going through that process, the key takeaway from this, right, is that you had more focused, intentional time. And I'm guessing, and I'm not sure, that might have led you into the space of the creation of your podcast. And so you said your original innovator project did talk about helping multilingual families, right? And like looking at like digital citizenship and building out resources. But somewhere along this way, that idea evolved into My EdTech Life. So like, how did
Yeah.
you go from that to like podcast? Like, what helped you to
Yeah.
shift into that direction?
So the podcast had already started prior to me getting into the academy, but I didn't think that this was going to be like a project. To me, this was kind of a an extension of Global GG, where I saw myself as okay, cool. Like I'm participating with Global GEG, but I just kind of wanted to make this more regional and more to here in my area of South Texas. So then, I kind of just took off with it and started really just mimicking what we were doing at Global GEG here for my area. And then just somewhere along the line, I just started thinking like, hey, like I know we're talking a lot about ed tech, but are we asking people how they're doing? Like, what are they going through? Like, what are the barriers? I mean, talk about mental health, talking about, it was a tough time for a lot of us. I mean, as far as mental health wise, I mean, being locked in and cooped up and behind a screen and so on. So, kind of the training and those podcasts of transitioning to ed tech and transitioning to virtual sort of took a life on its own of, yes, we're going to talk a little bit of tech, but I just want you to share your story. Like, how are you doing? How are you overcoming these barriers? How are you, overcoming those feelings of loneliness or frustration or anger or whatever it is that you're feeling at this moment because you're not able to be there in person to help your students to make their day. Maybe in their situation at home, you were the only safe place and safe space they had for those 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours that they were in school, and you made their day. And now they're in a terrible situation at home. And I'm not saying that for everybody, but I mean, I always treated my students that when they came to school, I always said, at school, I want you to be a kid from 7:45 a.m. to 3:10 when you're with me. And as soon as you go home, and I said, I don't know what your situation may be, but just do your homework, do what you need to do, your chores, and go to sleep and close your eyes and don't worry about anything else until you come back over here. And so imagine, like, to me, a lot of teachers having and worrying about their students and their well-being, but then now you have to start worrying about your own well-being. So it just took off from there, and we were having some really like open and deep conversations. I mean, talking about, innovate. I mean, I interviewed innovators too, and they were just talking about just their mental health, the depression, the things, and people were opening up. And I think for that period of time, it was something important to talk about, as hard as it may be, but people needed to hear that they weren't alone in these feelings, but that their feelings are valid, but that there's also the upside of things, to see what we can do to work through this together. And that's what it felt like, that community, that we were here to work through all of this together. So that's what it shifted into. So when I was in the academy, I just, that was always on my mind, and that was always on my mind. And I said, I know this project is personal to me too. The digital citizenship and helping our parents. But I guess because of that time, I just decided to tell my coach and say, look, like, for this time, this is what we need. And so then again, that's when I rang the fail bell and switched over, because talk about learning how to adapt to that given situation. As much as my heart was with that particular project, but I had to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And my project switched, and it was the best thing that could have happened for that given period of time. Now, the podcast, obviously, after COVID and everything, has kind of returned to those roots of really strictly ed tech focused and just what is out there, pedagogy, and intentional use of technology. And that's where we're still going for these 6 years now. So it was a very interesting time, during VIA 20.
Wow. I mean, that just shows that the power of storytelling for human connection, just for you to have created a safe space where people could share their stories, tell their stories, and then it's that human connection. I know Tina and I we're on episode 12, and just from hearing the stories of these innovators, I'm so inspired. And every new person we talk to, and I'm in awe as you're speaking. I'm hanging on every word. And I just imagine we're in episode 12. You've done over 300 episodes. in your last 6 years. Are there any key lessons that you have learned from hearing these stories from educators, whether it's personal or pedagogical?
Yeah, I think for me, just to be able to amplify their voices. I mean, there's so many stories that people bring up, and really, like, I think for myself, the most memorable one was actually with Kat Lemon. She's an innovator. I forget what cohort she was in, but I think you're familiar with her because she works with Andy at Canopy, and talk about somebody really putting themselves out there and being very vulnerable. I mean, very vulnerable. Her and Toby Doncaster, two from the UK, those two uh, episodes really come to mind because, I mean, just to hear somebody open up that much about what they're going through and what they're feeling, but still working through it and still doing the ed tech and still supporting their community, whether it's through schools or in that case in the UK trusts. And Toby Doncaster, I think he was doing adult education too as well. And just the way that they would push through and do those things. I mean, to me, it just shows how resilient our educators can be. And I'm not saying that just because they're educators, they're resilient, but there's just something about an educator, somebody who really has a heart and a calling for education, no matter how hard things get, and things have gotten really, really hard, they push through because they truly, truly have a heart for the outcome in helping their students succeed. So for me, all of these episodes that I have done just really inspire me in very unique ways because, like you mentioned, storytelling, everybody has a unique story. And that's the way we used to learn, aside from ed tech and putting that aside, storytelling is the way that we would learn from our elders. I still remember stories from my parents, from my grandparents, from my great grandparents that they would share, and learning lessons and learning, how things were built or things were made. And and somehow along the way that just becomes part of you, or you're able to take what they have shared, and at that given time that you need something or you're going through something and you remember those conversations. I mean, that is powerful, like leaving a mark, forever, in an episode that people can go back to, but not only the episode, but really in your person, that you can fall back on and say, hey, this is what they did. This is what they shared. I'm going through this now. I know I can get through. And so that is where I'm at right now. And so, but those two episodes, I can't remember the episode numbers, but it's Toby Doncaster and Kat Lemon or Layman. So please forgive me, Kat, if I misspelled, if I mispronounced your last name. But those were the ones that really stick out the most very early on during the pandemic time. And now, like I said, it's more focusing on the successes of others, amplifying their work, what they're doing, and how they're also continue to inspire, educators today and innovators of tomorrow. So, that's where it's at right now.
I think I think there's something so powerful in the idea of a teacher sharing their story and being able to say their entire journey, because even though it's a unique journey, and I'm probably speaking for Liz and I both, just being on our 12th episode, we've gotten so many insightful tidbits and we've heard so many amazing things from people. And like the fact that you can pull out two specific people and what you have done in My EdTech Life, it's it's a little bit, I don't want to say crazy, but a little bit, how do I put it, humbling more to me, that there is so much in everyone's small processes and everyone's going through what they've been through, that you can find so much inspiration and you can find so much empathy and you can find so many ideas that just spark you to want to try something new. And to be honest, you've had such a big influence on my ed tech journey. And I'm going to make it a little personal now, like, because we are only on our 12th podcast. Like, what advice would you give to someone like me and like Liz, who's stepping into podcasting and trying to grow this space? Like, what what is your advice?
Yeah, I mean, best advice that I ever got, and shout out to Chris Nessie, was just click record. That's it. Like, and you're doing it. You're 12 episodes in. Um, I what I would also tell you is not focus right now at 12 episodes. Don't focus on numbers. Don't focus on who's listening, who's watching, who's giving us likes, and so on, because you will burn yourself out very early. There's a small percentage of podcasts. Usually, I think it's maybe about 7% or so that even make it past episode 8. So you've already surpassed that, which is fantastic. So just keep doing what you're doing. Don't focus on the numbers because they will come. Keep in mind that it's a brand new episode or a brand new show. It's a brand new platform for you both. And slowly and surely, that is going to grow the more you put yourself out there and the more stories like this that you're bringing and the innovator stories that are going to be truly inspiring. And it's a wonderful work that you're doing because I immediately, like, when I saw the opportunity to sign up, I signed up because I feel like I want to give back to the innovator community and to the educator community because they've given so much to me, and it's just my way of paying it forward. So just be consistent. don't be uh don't be so harsh on yourself, and just continue really opening up the platform and make it feel like that just safe space that people can come on, share their stories, and just be vulnerable. And I think that this is something great that you're doing because I myself have not spoken like this in a podcast ever. So this is my first time really kind of opening up a little bit more about those experiences and what I've gone through and what I've learned from those experiences. So I think you're doing fantastic. So just stay consistent. Don't worry about the numbers. Those will come, and just keep clicking record.
Well, thank you. That is great advice. I'm going to be listening to this episode over and over again, for all of your inspiration from your story and also for this great advice. We're also so grateful that you saw this opportunity. It just shows our community and who we are, and it also shows you that you have this amazing established podcast, and you were so eager to jump right on and help support fellow innovators, fellow educators, who are really newbies just starting out on this. So we're so grateful to you for taking the time to talk to us, to share your story in this way, to sit on the other side of the podcast desk, and be the one who's answering the questions. But I just want to kind of wrap up this innovator story. And you said you rang the fail bell, but it definitely wasn't a fail. It was a pivot, and it was a necessary pivot. And I, like you said, that work is there. And a lot of it, I'm sure, is being accomplished in these conversations. But from the Innovator Academy itself, are there any parts of that design thinking or the work that you did during those 7 weeks that has kind of stuck with you and continues to stay with you in your work today?
Yeah, it's just, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. I know they call it the fail bell, and it's really you make a pivot. But I think out of that was just that, it's that pivot or that failure, they're stepping stones to success. And so for any innovator or future innovator that's listening, if you find yourself in that moment in time where you say, you know what, I think I need to pivot, it's okay to make that pivot. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Do what you need to do and do what feels right, because your heart will tell you for that given time, it will tell you what it is that you need to do and pivot into. But that right there has been probably the biggest thing that I have ever taken, because to me, Google Innovator, what at that time was the biggest thing that has happened to me. And even to this day, I should say it is the biggest thing that has happened to me. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, you're talking to somebody who just got their doctorate, this last year, and still the Google Innovator Academy, I could say, is probably the biggest thing that has happened to me. And so cherish every moment of it, and learn how to adapt. And that's really what I have taken: just improvise, adapt, and overcome. And those three words have helped my career and have helped me in anything and all things that I have done. Just having that ability, and I have the Innovator Academy to thank for that too as well.
Ooh, so the idea of improvise, adapt, and overcome, and that whole point of you sharing on your platform with so many educators who you said part of the magic that happens is people becoming vulnerable in that situation. And now you have expanded from just wanting to start in Texas all the way out to educators sharing their stories and ideas all around the world for the last 6 years. I'm going to wrap up with one question: that if you could give every educator listening permission to share one thing more openly this week, if you could say, like, what is the question you would maybe ask them, or what would you want them to do to feel in that space?
What would I tell them? And it doesn't have to be a question, right? It could just be maybe kind of advice, or
Just
does it have to be?
anything, if you gave them permission to open up and be vulnerable about something on this week, what do you think you would tell
Okay.
them to do?
Here is some of the best advice that was shared with me a couple of years ago. And I want every single educator and teacher that is out there that is listening to really take these words and just take them and always remember them, that it's okay to not know everything. It is okay to not know everything. And once you kind of realize that, it takes a lot of pressure off of you, because many times, because we are in the front of the room, we feel like we need to know everything and we have to have the answer for everything. But it's okay to not know everything, because at that time, that is when you can go ahead and flip the script, and it's okay to learn from your students. I learned from my students sometimes more than they learned from me, but we learned it together. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's okay to not know everything. But I think that's something very liberating. And it was for me, that I don't have to be the expert. I can teach you and show you the little that I know. And together, then we can take it to that next step. So it's okay to not know everything.
What perfect advice to wrap everything up. And I feel like that's the culmination of our whole conversation, which is amazing. In the description for the episode, we obviously have linked your amazing podcast, My EdTech Life. But while we have you, is there anything else that you have coming up that you want to promote, or a way that people can reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. On my website at myedtech.life, you can definitely connect with me on all socials. So please feel free to connect. I am pretty much everywhere. And so don't hesitate to connect. Don't hesitate to reach out. I was so grateful that I had some innovator uh, they were applying for the Innovator Academy. And it was so nice to hear from them and kind of help and guide them and share my experience with them. So next time there's an Innovator Academy or anything, and you want somebody to look over your application or just talk something through, please don't hesitate to reach out. And even if it's not Innovator, just reach out. My DMs are always open, and I'm always here to help in any way that I can. And if I can't help you, I promise you I'll connect you with somebody who can, because like I said, I may not know everything, but I know people who know a lot of stuff, and I can definitely connect you with them.
So you heard it here. If you are wanting to be a Google Innovator, reach out to Dr. Mendoza and he will totally help you with stuff. Hopefully you've gotten some amazing ideas right now. I know that I'm ready to go improvise, adapt, and overcome certain things, and also make sure I don't have all of the answers. So thank you so much for coming on here today and sharing your amazing story and your passion for reaching out and talking to educators. To our listeners, if there is something that sparked part of the conversation, please put it in the comments. Google innovators, come on our show. We would love to hear your story as well. Once again, it's all about storytelling. And if you're aspiring to become an innovator, take that leap, try it out. You don't need to have all the answers. So stay connected, stay inspired, and keep it unscripted.